Welcome to the AI Corner. I'm your host, Mike Bailey, here to spotlight the people shaping New Zealand's AI future. In today's episode, we're speaking with Serge van Dam. Serge is a Wellington-based tech investor and board director with a track record of scaling globally minded SaaS companies in fintech, proptech, and AI. He's known for blending sharp go-to-market execution with a deep focus on human-centric leadership. Welcome to the pod, Serge.
Thank you for having me.
I've been enjoying your content on LinkedIn.
Yes, well, I'm sorry about that. LinkedIn seems to think I'm an influencer, so I seem to dominate some people's feeds, especially in New Zealand. So sincere apologies to everybody.
You nailed the VO3 prompting from the lips of where I'm sitting, but no, it's awesome to see. So what was your first real exposure to AI? I mean, you've been in the tech space for a long time, but what really clicked for you and what was that moment?
Yeah, I guess ChatGPT had just come out. We were on the Marlborough Sounds at our holiday house, and our next door neighbours, one of them is a partner in a accounting firm. And so you did the first thing, you did a eulogy for my dad because that's what he wanted. Then, wrote a limerick, usual stuff that people do to muck around. And then I tried a couple of hard things. And, not surprisingly, most things we do as humans are related to language. And it was pretty obvious to me then that, legal services, accounting services, anything that uses the human word or human numbers were going to be up for automation. So that was kind of when the penny dropped. I didn't really know how it was going to all flesh out, of course. I couldn't predict the future, but I thought this is going to be a big, big technological breakthrough. And then I've guided a lot of people, founders in particular, through their own breakthroughs and just seeing them when the penny drops for them. And so I've been fortunate to witness that because I happen to work with 10 or so B2B SaaS companies and probably 30 or 40 founders.
Interesting. And when you say like guiding founders for them to see the penny drop, was that more of you just nudging them, or had they seen it and you were kind of both in finding your way through where the next opportunity was? Like, are you having to push people in that direction?
Definitely having to push some people still now, but I wasn't necessarily trying to push everyone. I was just trying to show them some things. And it came in all forms and, all shapes and sizes. Got a founder whose aha moment was getting ChatGPT to make up and read a story to his then 4-year-old. And that's when he's like, oh my God, this thing can do anything. That's nothing to do with business, but it was just when the penny dropped for him. And there were others who, saw some show and tell from what someone else was doing and a video of a tool or something, and the penny dropped for them. So my job was really to nudge and question and provoke, which is probably my general job anyway. And at different rates and at different timings for different reasons, different founders and leadership teams have come to see what's possible. I should say there's still some who don't really have high conviction. They sort of intellectually understand it, but they're not exactly convicted.
So I suppose with the founders that you see that aren't necessarily gravitating towards AI to rethink their business model or their operations internally, are you concerned for them, or do you think they know something that we don't?
Yeah, I'm generally concerned. I do think there's a snowball of sorts kind of heading our way, and it's getting bigger and bigger. Unless you start rolling your own, it's going to be pretty challenging. So yeah, I am concerned about that. And again, my job, I could just walk away, but it's not really in my nature. My nature is to just try and guide, show, ask questions, all of that stuff to get people to see, because you can't force someone to believe anything. Some people don't believe in climate change or that it's real. It doesn't matter how much evidence, how many experts, the visible signs of it. We're in mid-August and some ski fields haven't opened. It's pretty obvious climate change is a real thing, but some people still don't believe it, and you can't force people to believe it. So I sort of think that way about all sorts of things, and AI just happens to be the most pronounced technological revolution of our lifetime. Well, that's what I think, and probably what you think. And if some people can't see it, our job's to show them.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a number of people talk about the Great Divide in terms of different types of companies, and I think there is the Great Divide: those who believe in it and those who don't. And I think even within those that do believe in it, you're going to have companies that are pre-AI era, which they'll become AI enabled in some way, and they will still operate in the same way that they kind of always have. They'll do some new stuff. They'll apply AI to old processes, but I think those that are generally pre-AI era but want to become AI native, because I do think you can reinvent your company. That's not out of the question, right? But I think there's going to be only very few that will truly turn from pre-AI era to becoming AI native. And so I suppose, focusing on the likes of data at the infrastructure level, AI first workflows, modernizing your architecture. There's a big cultural shift, of course, as well, and building capability. But I think a lot of businesses won't actually think about that and apply it in the right way. They'll take that kind of skeuomorphic thinking that Chris Dixon applies to new technologies. I don't know if you kind of see that same type of thing, and that'll take time for the landscape and the market to catch up to understanding what an AI native business actually is.
Yeah. So I do. I stole a mental model from Tim Pointer from Reason Agency, which is the 4 personas, and we talk about this in AI Supercharge, the AI company that I co-founded with my friend Dasha. And the 4 personas are the exceptional tinkerer, the person who just give them a tool or her a tool, they want to play with it and see what's possible with it. The second persona is the compliant optimist, who's like, hey, this is what we're doing. There must be a reason this is all popular and people are doing it, so let's give it a go. You have the reluctant observer who goes, well, I'll just see what other people do and see if it's a good thing, but I'm just going to take no view on it. And then you've got the fearful idealist who's really anti it. And so those are the 4 personas we use in our training, especially the corporate training around AI. And you can see them in the room. They're always there and you can spot them. They can spot themselves quite often. And I think that's true for companies too. So companies will have that persona, typically to do with their founder or their leadership or their owners or some mix of all of the above, right? And so I think your assessment's correct. I just saw yesterday something I thought was very powerful. The founder of Lendy, or Aussie Home Loans, which is an second-tier Australian lender, and the CEO went out to all staff with an email explaining that he was all in on AI and the company was all in on AI and they're going to be an AI-first company, and that anyone could resign and get a payout if they felt this wasn't for them, etc. But culturally, from the ground up, everything they were going to do, every team was going to be organized around AI first. And I thought that was really, really brave for a company with 3,000 employees or something like that, for whom many are going to be have already been affected and are going to be affected. And obviously, that company probably fits into the exceptional tinkerer stuff. They already have dozens of AI services in front of their customers in a regulated sector, financial services, lending in particular. Right. So that company has a particular persona, which in this case is clearly being driven by the CEO who's had some sort of eureka moment at some point in the last couple of years.
Fascinating. Yeah, I mean, in some industries as well, that's almost going to be a non-negotiable for some companies, I would say. I mean, you think about the legal sector or professional services as well. Professional services is a hard business model to continue to charge up high costs for human intellect and activities when the value of knowledge is not going to zero, but it's trending to zero. It's ubiquitous in a sense, right? So
yeah, but I still come across partners and established law firms who think this is not a thing. AI is not going to change anything about their job. People are still going to want to come to them for advice and so on. And similarly, consultants. It's not universal, but there's definitely plenty of them who feel that way. And they do genuinely believe it. They're not just saying it to be obstinate or whatever. They actually don't see how this would change things. Whereas you and I, as you said, the value of knowledge has gone to almost zero.
Yeah, and not to diminish the value of what they bring to a customer in terms of their role becomes about judging inputs and outputs of AI at the end of the day. And then the faster they see that, the faster they'll protect themselves. And you've got to imagine that people are protecting their turf out of, fear and all the rest of it. But at the same time, it's coming for their markets.
Totally agree.
And so you're doing a lot of training at the moment. You mentioned Supercharge. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that and what's the proposition?
Yeah, so AI Supercharge, it's basically an in-person half-day training process. We're primarily focused on business productivity, so teaching people early in their journey how to use the LLMs, the Geminis or the ChatGPTs or whatever you're using in your company to do a whole lot of use cases, from writing a job description to a go-to-market plan to doing customer support, sort of things you'd be well aware of. It's very much entry level, but the idea is to show that for every role, every function, every kind of company, AI has quite a lot to contribute. And so it's basically hands-on exercises in a classroom, back to school, follow the instructions, do stuff. And it's been really successful. We've got quite a lot of demand for it. We're running it in Wellington primarily. We're going to do a couple in Auckland late in August, early September, and see if there's a market there, which I imagine there will be. And then we have, I reckon, back to the personas, I think the exceptional tinkerers and the compliant optimists leave the classroom and go and just make incredible magic happen. And we typically get back together a month later to see, hey, what have you done in your business? And just some of the results we get from ordinary, everyday people are just incredible.
Also, what sort of roles always, I guess, shock you or surprise you? Because, there's the preconceived notion from a lot of people that those that are more technical are probably going to adapt to AI better. But then you've got the generalists who see how they can 10x their output because they previously haven't been technical or they never had this type of capability before. But what sort of...
Yeah, I think it's the generalist who's time poor and ambitious. does amazingly well. So it's not the typical technological persona as you're implying. It's just someone who's busy. And I'd say if I had to pick a persona, it's like a 45-year-old business owner mum who's like busy, has a lot of shit to juggle, has a lot of different priorities on her time, isn't particularly technical, but wishes she was, and just makes stuff happen. And it starts with sort of predictable things, as you can imagine. But, can go all the way to having someone with no technical experience, having their own internal mobile app for their workforce and things like that. So we've seen quite amazing outputs from these ordinary, everyday, white-collar professionals.
That's awesome. And they can become your hero case studies, right? I mean, if you can get that market excited, there's a massive opportunity. What about, I know people are self-opting into your courses, but do you get many naysayers joining the course and almost seeing the other side after the session? Or is it everyone coming in is pretty open-minded to what you're teaching them?
Most people are self-selecting. The ones who really hate it will, call the sickie even if their boss has told them they're coming. We have had a few. We have had a few people who refuse to engage, less on philosophical grounds, more on I'm too old to learn something new. So it's more a personality trait than it is about AI. Like I'm sure if we were teaching them how to do something else, they probably wouldn't engage either if it was new to them. So you get a bit of that. But you definitely get your turnaround candidates. Like the first exercise we do in AI Supercharge is unrelated to work. We do one that's basically just plan the holiday of your lifetime, like the best holiday you could imagine, plan it, do end-to-end stuff. We add layers of complexity into that. And just there, some people who were saying, I don't really know how this is useful. And because they're doing a holiday plan, not something to do with work, they immediately trigger and just go nuts. And some of those, we can't even get them off the holiday planning. But yeah, so there's definitely quite a lot of turnaround candidates. And I suspect, the reluctance is typically they've done their job in the whatever way they've done it for the last 10, 20 years, and they don't want to do anything different. That's natural human trait for many people. But once you do it to plan your holiday and you see what's possible, you can't sort of deny the power of the tools.
Awesome. And so it sounds as though you're seeing a lot of different people coming into your courses. It's not just tech founders, not just employees. It's kind of a full spectrum of individuals across society.
Yeah, and typically people with operational responsibilities. So quite a lot of HR people, quite a lot of administrative leaders. You call them ops managers, things like that. Quite a lot of people who own their own businesses and feel like they're stretched and they've got a lot of things to do. Back to the generalist thing, I do HR in the company, I do finance in my company, I do planning. I'm not particularly good or particularly proficient at any of these. Can these tools help me? And obviously the answer is totally.
And how do you sort of guide these individuals on different adoption journeys? Because everyone's coming in from a different level of capability, but they've all got different goals at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think they lean into the things that either most excite them or are most pressing. The mental models we use in the course, AI as a superpower. Is there something you wish you were absolutely great at that you're already quite good at? AI as a collaborator, if you're kind of the only person doing the role, but you need feedback from time to time. So business owners typically have no one to talk to about their plan or their ambitions or whatever. And then AI as an intern. If you had someone working for you for not much money saying yes sir, no sir, what would you get them to do for you? And so those three mental models typically unlock what they want to work on. And sometimes it's just pure intern, get rid of all the dross, all the stuff that I don't like doing, just do that more efficiently. Sometimes people say, hey, I wish I could do this thing, but I can't right now because I don't have the skills or I'm not good enough or it's just too difficult. So I do think people pick their own path and we're super supportive of that. We're not going to tell people what their priorities are or how they should engage those tools, just a set of tooling that can just make you more effective. And you use that how you see fit.
Yeah, perfect. And so, as I understand it, your journey into training people in AI, that was part experimental, but part to evangelize the technology because you were curious also about product adoption when it came to SaaS and rollouts within businesses. What's the North Star for you?
Yeah, I don't have a North Star in terms of training. I'm trying to understand adoption dynamics. So I've got an evangelical perspective. I think New Zealand needs to get out of its productivity trap, and we need to start using these things regardless of what role you're in. So that's the evangelical component. In terms of my own knowledge, I'm an investor in B2B software companies. They're all rolling out AI features, or most of them are. How are people going to react to them? How are people going to adopt them? What are the things that are going to prevent them from adopting? I want to understand those things so that we make great decisions at the board table when we make investment calls.
What are some of the insights that you've uncovered that you're comfortable sharing?
Great question. I think this is kind of obvious in hindsight, but people find it very difficult to change their habits. So if you do a particular process one way, and you say, hey, look, if you wanted to explore AI, you got to do it that way, in a different way, most of them will forget to do it differently. And so people are kind of stuck in their ways, which again is kind of obvious, but really, really important when you design AI. So you either have to make it invisible inside the way the product already works, or you've got to flash something in front of them to say, hey, you're doing this. Would you like me to do this other thing? Or would you like me to do it this way? Would you like me to do it now or schedule it for later? And so where the success is coming is sort of interrupting the existing flow, but not demanding a new one, if that makes sense.
Right.
Or obviously, if you can make it streamlined so they don't even notice, it's even better. But yeah, asking people to do their existing process in a new way is difficult.
Well, do you think that part of that is with AI being probabilistic rather than deterministic, because the outputs are different every time by its very nature, that almost creates more hesitation or more stress on the person? Because I know that what I tried yesterday is not necessarily going to result in what happened today, which is I need a similar kind of outcome. Do you think there's something inherent in there?
No, I don't. Not in most of the work that we're automating in these SaaS companies. So if you take Released, which is a commercial real estate software I'm on the board of, and we've launched a lot of AI features, the sort of thing you've got is, hey, Mike's lease is up for renewal. Would you like me to set up an appointment so that you and Mike can negotiate it? Or, yes, it's probabilistic, how you put the language to Mike around when you should have a lease renewal, but the lease renewal says, the 13th of August in the lease. That's a fact. You can cite it. You can tell the customer that. So I think that's one thing. And then the other is you can actually tell the customer the probabilistic elements in it. So if I look at Law Cyborg, which is an AI law tool I'm an investor in, when you give a legal research answer to the user, Law Cyborg tells you a degree of confidence in the answer. So sometimes you need directional things as information. Is it going to be cold today? They don't need to get perfectly, but just directional is good enough. Sometimes it needs to be very specific if you're in a litigation type scenario. And so giving the user some probabilistic feedback is quite useful. And obviously in LLMs, you've got the term temperature, which you'll be familiar with, which is, how much flexibility do you want them? So there's human nature, there's the nature of the task, and then there's things you can do in the product to give feedback or allow the user to control all that.
Got it. And then I suppose moving into AI native startups, like how do you coach founders building and call it an AI centric category versus those who may not be building into an AI category? Do you have different levels of advice? Or do you try to keep it just principles at the end of the day?
Yeah, I'd start first principles are principles. What I've found is some of these AI native founders who are typically a bit younger, I find them amazing on average. Take Law Cyborg, I think Andrew and the team he's built are amazing. But on the other hand, there's some problems they're trying to face for the first time and they're trying to solve them the traditional way. And you're like, you could just use AI to do that, but because it's not a problem they've solved before, they haven't necessarily naturally anchored that way. So I do find even these AI native companies, they're quite often manually trying to solve problems that are quite easy to solve with AI, which feels a bit ironic. But again, I just think it's human nature. You just kind of gravitate to what feels natural, and many of these things it just naturally sort of direct you in one way, which may not be using these AI tools. So yes, there's a bit of difference, but I wouldn't say it's universal.
It's interesting, as you say, because a lot of those young founders probably don't have or carry as much baggage as some of us because they haven't been in the workforce as long, but yet they've still, some of those behaviors are calcified where you think they would almost be free of that sort of judgment.
Yeah, but they got calcified at university, and if not at university, at high school. You know what I mean? So it's because at university, even if you left university 2 years ago, you weren't using AI at university in any way. And so the idea is to read something in full or summarize notes in writing rather than pictorially, or whatever the things are, like essays are all in written form in universities, whereas, most effective communication human is going to be graphical in one way or another, right? So there's just an obvious example where the educational systems helped us learn to read and write and do a really good job of articulating things in language, which is fine. But most people, if you want to communicate a relatively complex idea, you're much more effective in a picture. So it's a very simple example, but almost no one who's an AI native thinks about communicating things as a picture. Whereas, the tools from, ChatGPTs to, tools like Napkin AI, which turn everything into a picture, are amazing at doing that.
Yeah.
So that's a really good example where it doesn't really matter if you're an AI native. You went through a system that got you to work in a particular way.
Yeah, it's sort of scary to think that. The schooling system isn't changing rapidly, apart from whether it's NCA or something else. But it's almost as if the next generation might still get caught in that same trap unless there's active coaching from mentors for young people or parents or other communities that can kind of break the mold, so to speak. Do you also think that, I mean, you keep a close eye on, the startup communities overseas, and you probably compare them to where New Zealand's at. What do you think that we do differently down under that others could learn from, how New Zealand founders run their businesses or start startups, or what could overseas founders teach New Zealand founders when it comes to building AI native businesses?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it hasn't. The characteristics are not new or different. So if you think about the cloud, New Zealand, no New Zealand company, is a major player in cloud infrastructure, but we built lots of verticalized or functional SaaS companies, many of whom have been successful and are still successful. If I think about AI, I just think very few New Zealand companies, if any, will be part of the AI infrastructure of the future, but we'll build functional vertical apps or experiences in one way or another. So I think in terms of the characteristics of the spaces we're trying to occupy, they're the same. Obviously, the cash going into AI startups in Silicon Valley is ridiculous. And I find it actually quite ironic. If you're AI native, you don't need much money. What are you actually going to do with $100 million if you've got a whole lot of bots doing stuff for you? So I find that sort of self-defeating in some ways. Now, you can buy Google AdWords ad nauseum, but the reality is a lot of that capital is clearly being wasted, not being very efficient. So what do I think of New Zealand? I think that we will find lots of niches. I think we will do so capital efficiently. We'll have a lower failure rate, which again is the case in the SaaS world. And I do think that capital efficiency will stimulate or exploit being AI first quite a lot more than a place where you've got capital. Because if you've got $100 million in the bank, you don't have to figure out how to automate some customer support process, because you're like, well, $100 million, I'm just going to hire a team of 10. It doesn't cost that much. And then I won't have the problem anymore. So I'm not saying I'm generalizing here, but the point is, if you've got $1 million instead of 100 million, you can't go hire a team of 10 because that's your whole $1 million being spent right there. So I do think you're going to see quite a lot of success in AI native companies in New Zealand, but again, they'll be in niches and pockets.
You think you're absolutely right. That's where resource-starved organizations seem to have a pretty good longevity. They don't seem to crash and burn as quick as sort of flush organizations that just their burn rate doesn't make sense, I suppose. What do you think we could be doing more to propel forward the AI startup community? Where are we lacking, and without leaning on sort of the government as a challenge, but what else needs to happen in the ecosystem to drive this forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we need to do a lot of show and tell. That's, to me, the most important thing, because in pockets, people are doing exceptional things for a specific function. So my intention actually later in the year is to run AI for adults, probably an event, a full-day event in Wellington and one in Auckland, where people just lift the kimono, say, hey, here's how I do outbound selling, or here's how I've built my UI design robot for our product, or here's how we do automated customer support using tool A and tool B. So I think a lot of show and tell, because that way, first we mostly don't compete, right? Because we're all focused on niches. And so the idea that you could transfer best practice from across companies, I think that's very doable. We're in a very small market where everyone knows each other and we're picking on different niches. So I feel pretty optimistic that that model would work in a way that it simply wouldn't work in major economic markets like, Silicon Valley or whatever.
I love that perspective, because a lot of what you hear when you talk to founders or startups in New Zealand is, I don't want to show you my idea because you might steal it. And you go, that doesn't happen that often. This isn't Harvard with Facebook or anything, like that there's plenty of room to swim in this ocean. And I think we have a view in this market that if someone's playing in that category over there, then I can't play in that category. That we don't see there being room for two operators and two kind of market leaders in some way, shape or form. We sort of think that those niches and verticals are all tied up before we even try.
Yeah. I mean, it's clearly nonsense, as you're implying. So our job's to prove that we're not actually directly competing. And if you were, the market's so big that who cares? So if you're both in, I don't know, financial services modeling, say, well, the market for financial services modeling tools and professional services is probably, I don't know, $100 billion or something. If we get 10% each, we'll probably be okay, Mike.
Market competition
So
is healthy, right? It makes everyone better. So
yeah, exactly.
yeah, I know it's
So yeah, I think that's what I think we should be doing, a lot of show and tell. And I try and stimulate that. And look, people show up. So, I ran a webinar on AI pricing a few weeks ago. We had, without particularly marketing, we had 200 registrants, 110 people showed up, and that's without any effort and, all local markets. So there's definitely a hunger to do that. It doesn't take that much effort. So I just hope we keep doing more of it.
awesome. Well, continue that good work. That's awesome. Before we close up, should we finish off with a quick fire round?
Sure thing.
Alrighty. GPT, Claude, or Gemini? What's your go-to?
I'm Gemini because everything else that I do is in Google, not because it's, probably ChatGPT is probably the best tool, but Gemini embedded into everything. And I do think Google will win in the long run.
When did you, out of interest, I'm assuming you made a ChatGPT move in the early days and then you flipped to Gemini at a point in time. Was that when the models became good enough, like when 2.5 came out? Or
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, cool. Most overhyped AI trend right now?
I really don't know. In some ways, it's the LLMs themselves, right? If we stopped all research activity now, we could still do like if all we ever had was DeepSeek and nothing else, we could still build amazing businesses that just transform the world, especially in the B2B space. So in some ways, I think the LLM stuff.
What's your position or thinking on, there are some people out there that think because the models are all just getting so amazing, it's almost just like using a different browser moving forward. And obviously there'll be specialized models for different purposes, but do you imagine we're going to get to that space where in the B2C market, it's the winner takes most and it is just Gemini models or just OpenAI, or are we all just going to pick one that's just as good as another and they're called it sort of commoditized?
Yeah, well, I think you're sort of implied, your answer is implied by your question. I think that because they're constantly overtaking each other, people will chop and change if they want the best. Do you need the best? I don't know. I own a Mazda CX-9. Is it the best car on the planet? No. Am I happy with its reliability, speed, safety? Yeah, it's good. It's felt like a good price point. It's maybe a bad analog, but to me, that's not the only thing that matters. And we can talk about, this would definitely not be a short question, general intelligence, super intelligence, and the race to that. But the reality is people are making decisions every week or every month around what tools can help me do my job better. And I'm involved in companies that say, hey, we've got a great tool that can help you do your job better. Buy us.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if I buy into people chopping and changing between models. I think that's going to be a very small portion of the market in the end. I think the experience would have to be substantially better for people to swap from GPT to anything else that comes up. I think, to your point, with Gemini being built into Google and Google being a massive player, then that's a lock-in in some way for a lot of users. But yeah, I think it'll be a two-horse race at the end of the day, and it'll be exciting to see where they take it. I suppose one New Zealand company quietly doing great work in AI, and maybe one that you're not super close to.
One that I'm not super close to. Well, I think one that's flown under the radar and just got people adopted is Contented AI, Christchurch-based company that turns basically every meeting into something productive. On one hand, it feels like not breakthrough stuff, doing meeting annotation and document production. So, doesn't feel like breakthrough. On the other hand, they've got dozens of significant business clients who are using their tooling every day to actually be heaps more productive. And so I'd vote for them since I can't vote for my own children.
Can't pick your own favorites. Yeah, I agree. Super high value activities from what is arguably a basic use case, but obviously in high demand, which is great. And what's your number one recommendation for people to get started in AI? And rather than it just being just ask AI some questions, how do you specifically try and get people motivated?
Well, I think you've just got to, it's something to just play with. And so it's experiential. Again, unlike other technologies, like the cloud was not experiential. To some extent, mobile wasn't experiential until all the apps came out, but someone had to build them. So I think that these AI tools are just purely experiential. So it's really, really powerful. My advice to people is put some time in the calendar, like even if it's an hour a week. So my format for a year was 2 hours a week. 1 hour for doing an existing business process using an LLM tool, and another hour for trying a new tool to do something random.
Awesome.
And I went to, there's an AI for that. I don't know if you know that website. And, there's now 38,000 tools or something on it. And I just pick one that you could authenticate with Google, and then I'd use it and do something. And some byproducts of that are just a lot of shitty videos and imagery and stuff that I've popped on LinkedIn. But, I've done a lot of tinkering. And all it was an hour for each every week. And a year of that, I became a pretty proficient user of tools and pretty good sense of what's possible and what's coming and all of that.
I think that's the best advice I've heard yet. So thank you for that. Awesome. Well, thank you, Serge, for joining us today, and thank you to our listeners. Please subscribe to the channel for weekly episodes and to hear more from the people building New Zealand's AI future. Thanks for tuning into the AI Corner.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, people. Good luck AIing in the future. Bye for now.
Thanks, Serge.